Hello Sagittarius, and welcome to your monthly video horoscope for the month of December 2014. Before we get down to talking about the astrology this month, I just wanted to wish you a very happy and prosperous season and an excellent new year, regardless of how you celebrate this season. Let's talk about the astrology this month, but first, before we get into that, let's kind of precede that with one more message, which is in watching these horoscopes, it's important, if you have the opportunity to watch for your rising sign or ascendant, as well as your sun sign. I know many of you are probably just watching for your sun sign, but please do watch for your ascendant or rising sign if you know that as well. If you don't know it, there's a free chart calculator that's on my website. It's available under the astrological services link on my webpage, and I've also included a link to it further down on this YouTube page too, under the description. Okay, so in whose eyes do you choose to see yourself this month, Sagittarius? Life offers us quite a contrast in relation to this. There are times where we're blind even to ourselves and to our own tendencies and to our own habits. But when it boils right down to it, you are the one person who stands the greatest opportunity to get to know yourself on the very deepest level and to know all of your inner workings more than any other person has the propensity to. It's important that you put yourself first in relation to that, because other people will make judgments. Quite often people make judgments. We all make judgments. Maybe on that level we shouldn't criticize or hold another person guilty for making judgments, but we should just honor ourselves and, when possible, honor another person, but always with the recognition that we are the only people who truly, truly know ourselves on the very deepest level, and the same goes for everybody else. With that being the case, putting yourself first does not necessarily mean that you are going to be selfish. Let's talk about some of the aspects this month and how this ties in with what I've just been talking about. We start off the month, at the point that I'm recording this, we're already about a week into the month because it's just been a very busy last couple of weeks for me, so I apologize for the delay. But we start off this month with a harmonious aspect between your ruler Jupiter and Venus. Venus is presently transiting your sign. Whenever Venus is transiting your sign, or anybody else's sign for that matter, it brings the propensity for self-healing, self-understanding, refining some of the harsher points in your life. And part of this relates to you being able to tune into yourself, honoring your own freedom, honoring who you are as an individual, and with respect to the fact that you are going to know yourself better than any other person has the propensity to. Venus is presently transiting a section of your sign that's called Mula, whereas Jupiter is in Leo, and in a section of Leo that's called Magha. Magha relates to confidence, strength, power. It can sometimes turn into pride, but more in the instance that we're talking about at present, there's been a need for you to, kind of hold your own in a bit of a struggle. And now you're beginning to somehow become, I want to use the word validated, but you don't really need anybody else's validation at all. But now the fact that you have been deciding to hold your own begins to become apparent to another individual, and there can be the capacity for them to understand it on a deeper level. This aspect coincides with another harmonious aspect between the Sun and Uranus. The Sun also transiting your sign and in a section of the sky that's called Jyeshta. Jyeshta relates to the ability to step outside of a situation and see it in clarity and awareness and in fullness. Uranus is in a section of Aries that's called Revati. Revati marks the end of one cycle, and the beginning of the next cycle has not yet come into being. So it's kind of like being in a state of limbo. And part of this relates to your capacity to know yourself, understand yourself, and break free from a stuck place in your life that has been on hold for far too long. Interestingly enough, you've got the sun trining Jupiter in the sun trining Uranus in your fifth house, and Jupiter trining Venus in your first house. And even though this is not necessarily forming what's called a grand trine, this is hitting all the sections of your chart that are called your Dharma houses, which tends to relate to honoring your path first and foremost. At the time that you're hearing this video, Mars has already shifted into your third house, direction, application of energy, but an application of energy that suggests a tremendous amount of progress for you in alignment with who you feel and who you know yourself to be inside of yourself, rather than feeling like you have to adapt quite as much to another person's needs. Not saying, well, we're going back to the thing at the beginning about being selfish. You wouldn't be being selfish by doing so. But this is a month where it's much more about honoring your own path. On the 6th of the month, you've got a full moon in your opposite sign, the 7th house of your chart. That's going to deal with relationships. And this is in a section of Gemini that's called Mrigashira. We're going to touch on all this. At the same time this happens, Mercury, which is traveling in close proximity to the sun for the entire month, will be forming the same harmonious angle that the sun did a couple of days previous. And so it's going to be forming a harmonious angle with Uranus, giving you deeper insight into the situation that you've been dealing with, giving you even more confirmation that you need to firmly adhere to your own path in this situation. And sure, it's okay to give over some of that strength to another, but it needs to be at your own choosing rather than necessarily at your own sacrifice. Now, I use that word guardedly because sacrifice means to make something sacred. But quite often we sacrifice something reluctantly. We don't really want to do it. And really a sacrifice is something that should be made willingly. So this is something that I'm saying that you've been doing that isn't quite on such a willing level. It's something that you feel that you have to do. But you're beginning to recognize that this is not your responsibility. You don't have to own this. And this full moon that's going to happen in Gemini, and in Mrigashira. Mrigashira is about taking things apart and putting them back together again. Whatever interaction this is, whether it's with a boss, whether it's with a partner, you're recognizing that it's not working out for you in the way that you would like for it to, mainly because you don't feel that you're being honored. It can seem a lot like it's the other person's show, and they're really running the show. And there's a need to kind of, if there's going to be a reconciliation between yourself and this other person, there's a need for a different approach to this situation. On the 8th, the Sun conjuncts Mercury exactly, again within Jyeshta. When the Sun and Mercury conjunct each other, it brings the propensity for great insight. And this is happening in your first house. So knowing yourself, seeing yourself clearly, honoring yourself, recognizing that no, you haven't been wrong, no matter how much another person might have been judging you and saying that you should do this or you should do that. Really, it's up to you to know what you should do, can do, and would do in any specific given situation. On the same day that the Sun and Mercury conjunct each other, your ruler, Jupiter, sits still in the sky. It's been direct, meaning apparent forward motion, for the last several months. And now it's getting ready to shift retrograde, where it will appear like it's moving backwards in the sky. Of course, planets never move backwards. It's just an illusion from where we are here on the Earth. But when a planet is stationing, it becomes very powerful. When Jupiter stations, it becomes very receptive. And you've got this happening on the same day that the Sun and Mercury conjunct each other in your sign. This is a very empowering aspect, a very strengthening aspect, if you use it to the extent of its capacity. On the 12th and the 14th, I'm going to touch on both of these days, because on the 12th you have Mercury forming a harmonious angle with your ruler. It's the same angle that Venus was doing earlier in the month. And also the Sun forming the same angle with Jupiter. Now, both the Sun and Mercury and Venus earlier on in the month are in a section of the sky that's called Mula. Now, Mula is a very driven, very passionate energy. And because of that, it is sometimes given to making mistakes or hitting a brick wall and then recognizing that it was going about something the wrong way. Only by the time the Sun and Mercury hit this area of your chart, there's a very balanced viewpoint on offer to you, and one that gives you that same energy of being driven and passionate about your approach, but you're going to be able to go about that approach with much more open eyes and from a much more balanced perspective. Thing is, you need to focus on maintaining that perspective. Just do what you're doing because it's the right thing to do and because it's you and it's who you are. Don't do it to prove anything to anybody. Don't do it out of a sense of pride. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. Now, here's the big one. Uranus squaring Pluto, middle of the month. Now, Uranus and Pluto have been involved in a bit of a tense aspect off and on since 2011. And this month, they become exact in that aspect once again. They're going to separate from that over the course of the month. And then in the spring, in March, they will reapply and become exact in that aspect once again. Now, what this relates to, Purva Ashadha is where Pluto is. Now, Purva Ashadha, I'm going to touch on something here, and I will back it up with a bit of an explanation. Purva Ashadha relates to the causal nature of the soul. Now, what do I mean by the causal nature of the soul? That's the soul in its natural state, just attracting to itself the things that it needs in order to prosper, grow, and be nourished. Sometimes those things that it needs are challenges. But Purva Ashadha ultimately is about being real. This is about valuing your freedom, honoring yourself, self-esteem, self-confidence, and being truly authentic in a situation. But the thing is in doing so, it may mean some challenges in another area of your life, an area where you have perhaps been looking for some solutions, especially within a personal connection. If it's a romantic connection, that's an even deeper indication that this is the right area of your life to take a look at. Things may get broken out of a deadlock at this time. Keep in mind that it's only positive, but it might be a bit tumultuous. Coinciding with this and partially triggering it is the fact that on the 20th, you've got Venus forming the same square with Uranus and Venus forming a conjunction with Pluto. Now, basically, this is going to be taking place at the exact time that Pluto and Uranus are exact. Granted, Venus hits this aspect on the 20th, but it's close enough to being exact to create a marked impact on the situation. Now, Venus rules Purva Ashadha, so this really adds a lot of power and potential to Pluto. Honoring yourself, not being afraid to do so, even if it means that it creates a shift within a connection that is not the most happy shift that you were perhaps looking for. It's the shift that's needed. And that's the important thing to keep in mind with this situation. On the 21st, Mars, now in Aquarius, forms a harmonious angle with Uranus. Now, what makes this aspect so powerful is the fact that Mars is in Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus, and Uranus is in Aries, which is ruled by Mars. So these two planets are very powerfully exchanging their energies. Coinciding with that, on the very same day, Uranus, having been retrograde for the last several months, is also stationing and getting ready to shift towards direct motion. Uranus is very revolutionary. It goes into specific areas of our life and really overturns things, creates radical, revolutionary changes. So wherever Uranus is involved on a personal level, there's a personal revolution going on. And for the last several months, there's been a lot of changes going on inside of yourself. Now you're getting the opportunity to put these changes into motion externally in your life. And to really, again, this is really also empowering the propensity for being authentic, because Mars is in Dhanishta, which on one level is about marching to the beat of your own drum, listening to yourself, listening to the rhythm of your own heartbeat. That's a very powerful symbol for Dhanishta because it is symbolized by a drum. But listening to the rhythm of your own heartbeat in harmony with the pulse of the universe and understanding exactly what that is all about and living from that space, even if it means revolutionary change in your life externally. Signs and signals are that a lot of changes are going to happen as a result of this, especially over the course of the next several months. Then you've got a new moon on the 22nd in the house that relates to self-esteem for you. This is in Capricorn and in your second house. So planting the seeds of new growth for yourself, a new approach to your life that's based on empowering you. And let's face it, if you're more empowered, somebody else is going to be empowered as well. Isn't that right? I think you know that. Now, on the 23rd, this happens roughly every 28 years. You've got Saturn entering your sign, and it's going to be there for the next couple of years. Now, before you start going, oh no, not Saturn in my sign, Saturn is a very positive planet, and it gets a very bad reputation. Without Saturn, nothing crystallizes. Without crystallization, nothing is created. Saturn is all about giving form. Now, why is it so difficult if it's about good things? Well, it creates resistance. It brings a challenge into our life, and it brings discipline into our life so that we focus on a specific area. And what is that area for you? It's you. Okay, now Saturn at the beginning of this transit is going to be in a section of your sign that's called Anuradha. Anuradha is very passionate, devoted energy, but sometimes it gets imbalanced and it gives too much of itself over to another. And what this is trying to bring to your attention ties in with everything else that we've spoken about so far, which is finding that balance between giving to yourself so that when you're giving to another, you're really giving from the heart. And when you're receiving from the heart. And let's face it, both of those are equally important. If you'd like to know a little bit more about how this month's aspects will affect you personally, because hey, there's so much more to your chart than just your rising sign or your sun sign, I do have a vast range of astrological services that are available through the astrological services page of my website. You'll find a link above. In addition, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube page yet, you might consider doing so for regular updates whenever there's a new video posted, which generally happens every couple of weeks with the new moon and full moon, of course, your monthly video horoscopes. And within the next week or two, there will be an interview with another Vedic astrologer where we talk about a lot of particular aspects of what being an astrologer is all about and good ways in which to approach an astrologer if you want to get the most out of a consultation. That's going to do it for your monthly video horoscope for your birthday month of December, Sagittarius. We also share this month with Capricorn. But wishing you a very happy holiday this time of year, very prosperous new year. And until next time, please do take very good care of yourself.